Hey everybody, it's Savannah Taylor, the Gardenista, your kitchen garden coach, and my aromas are really beginning to come in just beautifully. I wanted to take this time to kind of give some of you beginner gardeners a little pruning 101 when it comes to tomatoes, because the thing about pruning tomatoes, what's so important about making sure that you prune your tomato vine is, number one, you want to make sure that the plant is using all of its energy to produce as much fruit as possible. We don't want to have what's called those little sucker leaves, which take the energy away. It's kind of like distracting the plant because it's thinking, oh, I got to give nutrients to you and I got to give nutrients to you and you and you. So you want to prune away all that is not necessary for getting the best bang for your buck when it comes to having your tomatoes grow. All right, so that's one. The next reason why you really want to prune your tomato vine is you want to give your plant the best chance against disease. I've said before in previous videos that I call tomatoes the divas of the garden, okay? Because they are a little high maintenance, but they are so worth it. Because if you have ever had a store-bought tomato versus a tomato that's grown in the garden, you know the taste. There's just no comparison. So it can be very rewarding, which is also why I plant several tomato vines. I've got several tomato plants growing all over the place because we can never have enough tomato plants around this house. So, but you definitely want to give the plant the best chance it can have against disease and blight and all kinds of things that tomato plants are susceptible to. So pruning away all that excess foliage, all those excess leaves, so that it can get a lot of air. Now, I live in Southern California. We don't really have issues with humidity here. So that type of disease that would come as a result of too much moisture in the air, I wouldn't have that issue so much here. But for those of you who do live in humid areas or you do get a lot of moisture, you definitely want to prune away as much foliage. And I'll show you how to do that and the best way to do that in just a second. Now, the last reason you want to definitely prune your tomato vines is ripening. Now, if they're covered with a lot of foliage, if you have a lot of foliage going on, you're going to slow down the ripening process. You want the fruit, you want your tomatoes to be exposed to the sun as much as possible so that you can speed up the ripening process, okay? So let's get into it. I'll show you guys some pruning 101. Now, here is my Roma plant, and I'm going to use this as an example of a tomato plant that I've already pruned, but still needs to be pruned some more. Now, starting at the bottom, you can see that I have pruned away everything right up until the branch that is giving me my first fruits right here. And that's the general rule. You want to prune away everything up until the branch that gives you your first fruits. And especially if you live in a very humid area, or you're not getting a lot of arid, like here in Southern California, I could probably get away with a lot more foliage because the air is not humid here. But if you live in an area where it's humid and you're not getting a lot of, you're not going to get a lot of aridness, you definitely want to cut away as much foliage as possible. Now, here I am back at this plant and I'm seeing some more pruning opportunities, mainly here, this branch right here, okay, and this branch right here, which leads to more flowers, okay, if you can see those flowers. I know that this branch, it may or may not produce anything, but we don't need it, and we can break it away. And you can either use your pruning shears or just pop it off, just bend it back and forth. It should pop off right there. If you do use pruning shears, make sure they're clean, because you do not want to use pruning shears that you've used on a previous plant that had fungi or powdery mildew or anything like that, okay? Now, further moving up this branch, you see here how there's this V. You've got one branch that's going and leading to these tomatoes here, and then another branch that's going and it's leading to flowers right here that are eventually going to give me some tomatoes. However, I'm going to treat this part of the tomato plant like I did the rest of the vine. Okay, so I'm going to, and I know you guys probably like, oh, don't do that. Ah, no, it's counterproductive. Okay, these are considered sucker leaves, especially this little ditty right here. You see how you've got those two little tufts of leaves growing out of the apex, or like in a V, it's growing in the middle of the branch and the main branch. But I'm going to take this whole thing off anyway because we don't need it. And as we move up, now that I've cleared away all that, I do see that this little branch here does have some flowers that look like they're going to come out. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to prune any further up this vine here. Now here is another tomato vine that I have pruned, and as you can see, it's fruiting, and I've cleared away everything underneath. But now you see this little sucker. This is an example of a little sucker plant, and you can just pinch that off, okay? You don't need pruning shears. You can just pinch that off. You'll see those pop up every now and then, and when you do, you just pop them off, and you keep it clear all the way up to, like I said, where it's starting to fruit. And this is, again, what they call single stem tomato vining. And it will keep your plant healthy. It'll keep it fruiting. And especially if you have a short growing season, this will definitely help you get more bang for your buck in the time that you have. Okay, now over here I have some more tomato plants, and I just want to show you a little example of how, see down here at the bottom how I have all of those little sucker leaves. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to take my shears, and like I said, you can either use your hands or your shears, and I'm just going to clip all this away, including this right here. See, this I don't need. All right, and now you can kind of see a little better what I'm doing. All of this down here, gone. These are all, and this right here especially, that's a good example of a little sucker leaf that's growing in the apex. So it's growing between the main stem here and this branch. But I'm going to get rid of the whole thing. Okay, so we can have a nice, clean, single stem vine. Right, and I'm going to trim. There's actually some more because these probably can fruit. They're not dragging on the ground, so I'll just keep an eye on it. But definitely we want to do away with all of that you saw at the bottom. Okay, and these can actually go in my compost. Now, before I finish up this one, I just noticed before walking away, right here in this apex, there's another little sucker leaf. That's a good example of what you don't want. You can just pop it right off with your finger. You don't need your shears for that. Here's another one right here in the apex. Let me see, make sure you can see it first. Here's another one right there in the apex, some more sucker leaves that I'm going to pop off with my fingers. Just like that. And again, you just keep an eye on your tomato plant to, because those things are going to pop up, but that's pruning tomato plants 101. And I've got a nice, clean, single stem tomato vine growing up here. There's a lot more work to do, as you can see in this bed, but I just wanted to use this as a good, clear example of just some basic pruning 101. Okay, so just one final note about pruning. Be sure to make sure you clear away anything, any leaves that could be touching the soil, because you don't want that splashback when you water your plant. You don't want those leaves infecting the rest of the plant if there's anything, that it might be catching. The next thing is you want to watch for those sucker leaves that grow in between the branches. So you've got your main branch here, you've got a lateral branch here, and then you got some little babies coming out in the apex, right in the V. Those are sucker leaves that you definitely want to pinch away. Now, for those moments when you do use your shears, make sure you use clean shears. You don't want to, these are the shears, the only shears I use for my tomato plants. I don't use these particular ones on anything else in my garden just because I don't want to invite disease. Like I said, these divas, honey. Okay. So if you want to ever clean your shears, and I'll do a separate video on how to take care of your gardening tools, but just really quickly, you can dip them in alcohol or peroxide and make sure you just dry them off really well and re-oil them with like some WD-40. Some people use cooking oil, but I prefer to use, things for tools. So some WD-40 or something like that. But again, to be on the safe side, if you know you've used your shears on something that had some powdery mildew or it had something going on, make sure you disinfect your shears, especially with tomato plants, because honey, tomato plants don't play. All right. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, be sure and put them down below. I really am enjoying you all. Please don't hesitate. There are no dumb questions. I promise you, if you have a question that you think is dumb, someone else was thinking the same thing. Okay. All right. And until next time, when we grow something else, I'll see you then. Bye.